Hello, and welcome to the Super 70 Podcast, Episode 17, The Terminator. Super 70 is a podcast meant to play along with the film we are discussing. You don't have to, though, and can go listening without watching anything. I would, however, recommend that you watch the film we are discussing before listening to the Super 70 Podcast. You can find it on iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud, and my website at www.thatdylandavis.com. I'm Dylan Davis. I will be using the 2018 Blu-ray re-release, but there is a version found on voodoo.com for $9.99. This is the same version that came digitally if you purchase the Terminator Anthology on Blu-ray with digital downloads. If you can press play on your DVD using whatever version you have now, and on your Voodoo now, this podcast should sync with the rest of the film. For the first time on the Super 70 Podcast, I've asked a co-host to join me, and he is here. Introducing Mr. Dave Anderson.
Hi, how you doing? It's a pleasure to be here. I definitely appreciate you inviting me for this opportunity.
Oh, the pleasure is all mine. So I first saw this movie on VHS at my cousin's house. When did you first see it?
Ironically enough, it was also your cousin's house on VHS. No, I mean, I remember this pretty vividly. I don't remember precisely where, but I remember this is one of those definitions of a VHS movie in my brain, right? You have the Commando, you've got this, you've got, First Blood, these things that to me are the definition of the VHS, and they just go on constant rotation
Predator.
Back in the day. Predator's a good example. Battle Beyond the Stars, which, spaceships with breasts are phenomenal. There's all sorts of things like that I remember. Laser Blast was the first one we ever owned.
Laser Blast.
Yeah, it's not good. Continue.
The first VHS we ever owned was Star Wars.
Wow.
Yeah, I still have it.
Star Wars wasn't available for years.
Yeah.
We had a VHS that someone had taken of Return of the Jedi that they'd videotaped within the theater that we had a copy of.
Oh my God.
So you think pan and scan is bad? This is something else.
Pan and scan is shit, so yeah.
This is cropped.
Yeah, so this set is actually, I looked it up, this set is actually 16 feet by 3 feet.
Okay.
That's where the entire future thing takes place on a set that's exactly that large. Even the flashback we have in the future. And then this opening credit, I took this from Blade Runner. Like, you have the opening explanation in Blade Runner.
Yeah, I mean...
Which is just like 2 years before this.
I totally agree.
And this is one of the title shot is one of those misleading... I love the cursor square, which we haven't seen in 40 years, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Or the movie Alien, which was a few years prior.
Yeah, but the title scroll is one of these things that I think in the film is misleading. We talked about this before, about how this is like a $4.5 million film. Mm-hmm. And midway through production, they decided to dump another $2.5 million of special effects in it.
None of it on the opening credits.
Right,
Well, actually,
but the opening credits is it's deceiving, because this is a very, very high quality B movie that has passed itself off as like a $40 million adventure flick.
Correct. Yeah, it is definitely a testament to ingenuity.
Right, and Cameron would never have this problem ever again.
No.
So this is one of those films that you watch when you're a kid and you love it, and it's a man film, right? It's for men. Mm-hmm. And you grow older and you get kind of sideways about it because people say things like, well, fuck Rambo and fuck the Terminator and fuck hypermasculinity and all that anti-feminism business. And it's all because of Reagan and all of that man bullshit. Like, Reagan is the cause of all of our problems in the 80s.
Okay. From a societal standpoint, or a popular society perspective, I presume.
Right. But that's really weird, because I truly think that the center of this film and the center of this franchise is Sarah Connor.
Okay.
That's how I look at it, not
Sure.
the Terminator. But Schwarzenegger is the star. He's got the main credit, right? Hers is
Absolutely.
after his, right?
But it is large. It is entirely her story. Oh, interesting thing. I just rewatched this recently, and the theme song of the song, if you want to call it, of the music is very percussive and tremendous. Now, if you're watching this, I noticed this, or I'm imagining, very possible, that when the forks go into the dumpster, it actually mimics the sound almost precisely of the theme song.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
No, I skipped that, man.
And I was not stoned at the time.
That's deep.
Yeah, or just I'm making stuff up.
Well, in the play that Cameron has with he opens with a machine and you just got out of the future, and now you're in the past, and now you're looking at a machine that a man built, but it's you don't get the date until after.
Right. It's a very effective misdirection.
Right. And then, of course, you have the introduction of the machine. And, I mean, even when I was a kid, I saw this as the womb, the circle, the birth. And it reminds me a lot, actually, of Deckard showing up in Chinatown for the first shot. He's got that huge circle behind him. Okay. And I had to look it up. I did not know this, but it's the Chinese character for creation.
Interesting.
Is behind Deckard. Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the future governor of California.
And the introduction of manscaping to society. No body hair. It's freaking amazing.
But this is like a seminal film for Schwarzenegger. Like before this, I remember seeing Hercules before this and just thinking like I was entertained, but it wasn't serious. And I had seen both Conan films before this. Both of them were released before this. And the first Conan film, I think, is just masterful.
Yeah, I think that is a tremendously entertaining flick.
Yeah, and of course, I didn't know at the time who John Milius was or any of that. You know, when you're a kid, like I was 9 when this came out, right? So it was. You're just not hip on all of that. By the way, have you been to the Griffith Observatory?
I've not been actually to the Griffith Observatory. Drove by it multiple times, but never actually went up there. It's just one of those missed opportunities. You don't know it until it's gone. The punk scene with Bill Paxton, R.I.P.
God, man, I love Bill Paxton. He's from Fort Worth.
Is he now?
Yeah, he had an interview on Mark Maron's What the Fuck podcast like 2 weeks before he died.
Gotcha.
And if you ever get a chance to, is that like tire marks across his face?
It is totally tire marks. He's representative of the youth of society and how they've been run over.
Yeah. It's anarchy in the U.S.
Now, the gentleman, which I'm using that loosely, on the right.
Yeah.
Who is he? He's another one of those guys. I know I've seen him. I just can't place it. He looks like Dolph Lundgren's younger, stupider cousin, which is actually hard to believe.
It's either Brad Reardon or Brian Thompson.
Okay.
Those are the other two that are listed in the credits under Punk. That's it.
Thank God in the 80s that the style was oversized baggy clothes. Otherwise, that would not have fit.
So you notice the wet streets.
Yes, and I actually noticed that. I think that is a tremendous touch, to be honest with you. Obviously drew some inspiration from a lot of, cheap atmosphere solutions.
And I know that it's very common in film, and I learned this on the Futility Closet podcast last week. It's very common in film to wet down the streets because of shadows. Mm-hmm. It eliminates the shadows, and as a cameraman, when you're lighting your set, you don't have to worry about your shadows if you spray everything down and keep it to a certain level. And in California, I'd imagine it'd be pretty easy because you don't have the heat problem that you have here in Texas or even in New York when you're shooting in the summer.
Correct. Yeah, it is usually pretty temperate. Of course, it never has rainy streets, but it does, in my opinion, really always gives that grimy appearance. You think Taxi Driver. At least I do, right?
God, yeah, Taxi Driver.
And you kind of just get transported immediately into a state of mind, which is pretty effective for this particular scene and this movie.
The French Connection.
Correct.
Yeah. Wow, Friedkin and Scorsese. I never really tied them together. They're so different.
Kids, those are newspapers.
Okay, so we got Reese. Reese shows up, and in contrast to the Terminator, he's smaller, he's shorter. He looks pretty ripped to us, but he's not Mr. Universe.
No, but he's certainly ripped to me. He does some sit-ups, apparently.
Right. Stole the Bunsen.
What do you think that the cops were looking for with the spotlight prior to pulling up? Because they were definitely looking for something.
Homeless guy?
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, just knowing, we have a conception of the LAPD, and it doesn't get better the farther back you go in history.
It's been a pretty consistent, critical eye towards that organization.
Yeah. No, I never even thought about. And this guy, he actually reminds me of Al Powell for some reason from Die Hard. Like he just got back from Nakatomi. Now he's searching. Look at this alleyway. My God, it just looks like.
Which that is a pretty fair representation of what I like to think of Hollywood.
Hollywood or West Hollywood?
Mostly Hollywood in my memory, but yes.
Yeah. A great action film. It's got tits. It's got guns. And when you're 12, I'm sure, this is fantastic. Even better when you're 9.
Or 47.
Or 47. And all these great visual effects shots you remember, you watch them all as an adult and you think, holy Jesus, how did they do that in 1984? It was pretty mind-boggling to me. And there's a lot of special effects shots in this film, and it's hard to remember that this isn't sci-fi. Now, we should separate special effects and visual effects. Special effects is something that you practically shoot in your film, and visual effects is something that you go back and edit in later.
Right.
So, for all intents and purposes, Star Wars is filled with special effects, no visual effects, because they didn't have the
technology at the point to be effective.
Right. And then The Phantom Menace is completely opposite of that.
That's a movie?
So this is a film about a lot of things, but one of the things did you see the remake, by the way? I think it was Terminator Salvation, where they shoot the exact same thing that looks like in the exact same store, and they pick up the exact same sneakers with the exact same camera shot, and he puts the sneakers on his feet.
Nikes.
Yeah.
Yes. I do. I vaguely remember. It's one of the few things I remember about that movie, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Everything else went out the door, but the most memorable part to me was how they recreated everything from the first film to make it look like it.
Correct.
And then Emilia Clarke. Those were the two things that...
Mistake, I didn't see it.
No?
No,
I didn't see it. Oh, you
no, I must have seen it on the YouTube or part of it, but no, actually, I did not see that movie.
On the YouTube?
On the YouTube.
Okay.
More evidence of LAPD incompetence. He's able to steal a shotgun without breaking any logs or anything.
Yeah.
Or a convenient plot device.
Yeah, and this street just looks like every street I've ever seen in every movie shot in L.A. ever, including I'm thinking about what was the happy hooker trilogy that they had with the Schoolgirl by Night and Prostitute High Class Cargo during the day. Was it like Avenging Angel, and Avenging Angel 2, and that's every time he walks out of that street, I just think how many. I mean, this must be Sunset or Hollywood.
No, presumably, or just off it.
Yeah. And the flare, oh my God, the lens flare.
Oh, I thought you meant his collar.
Well, yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's popped. It's pretty pop collar. Okay.
The phone book.
Yeah, that's another thing that just got me about it.
But it's one of those things that makes sense. Oh.
At the time.
The lovely and fairly talented Linda Hamilton.
Right. And I love the female mullet.
Yeah, it is tremendous.
I was actually going to ask you tons of questions about Linda Hamilton because this is really, I don't know, I knew Princess Leia before Linda Hamilton, but yeah.
Just a quick aside, this is definitely one of my favorite scenes in the whole movie because I myself like big buns and I cannot lie.
Very good.
We're going to be re-recording a lot of this.
Nah, we'll do it all in one go.
Okay,
so yeah, I mean, I think that this is the first film I think I remember, other than Princess Leia, of like an actress taking over the film, because she's a minority in the beginning of the film, and by the time the film ends, she's in the majority of the film. And I don't mean like in every scene, just her commanding presence.
Right, she was definitely elevated throughout the course of the story.
Right. And then she starts off that way in the sequel, Terminator 2.
Correct.
Right. And it's almost like by the end of the film, her role regresses, and then it's the boy in the Terminator so it's a separate arc.
Yeah, and that's one of those things where I think he did make a misstep in the second movie, rather. Yeah.
And I've heard people tell me that Linda Hamilton doesn't look like a model, or she doesn't look like a lot of other Hollywood actresses, and I just completely disagree. Like she does have that girl next door look to me. I mean, I know that she's not like a Playboy model.
Well, certainly, but it is also one of those things where, I don't know. I mean, she has an uncommon every woman look to her, right? And generally speaking, that type of actress does not become terribly famous. And frankly, Linda Hamilton didn't become terribly famous. Her window of real exposure was Terminator 1, Terminator 2, and Beauty and the Beast, and there you go.
Well, that's true, and that's always the
Alamo.
Yes, I noticed that when I watched it last week.
Colton Ruger.
Yeah.
And Dick Miller.
And yes, Dick Miller, who just passed away like last week at the age of 96 or something.
He looks 96 there.
Yeah, and he worked for Roger Corman a lot in the 60s. in the 50s. And I mainly remember him from this and Explorers with Ethan Hawke and River Phoenix.
Right. No, he's just in my mind, one of those guys. I've seen him a zillion times. I can't even place where.
Right. But I've always been a fan of him. He shows up in a taxi cab, I think, in Ghostbusters or something. He's a great guy.
12-gauge autoloader, Uzi.
Yeah, he
45.
asked for the plasma rifle. I remember being 9, go, plasma rifle! I want the plasma rifle. Looks like a Spaz 12, yeah. I don't know why he passed on the Winchester pump.
Yeah. He's a man with, he's Austrian. It's one of those. He likes the modern look.
Yeah. No, he's had, if you think about Schwarzenegger's life, to go from being born in the western side of Austria, and Vienna was split at the time between 4 powers in the post-war area, to immigrating to America in the late 1960s, and then becoming a Mr. Universe contestant, and then in 2 decades becoming a major Hollywood star. And by the time you get to the 90s, and even Cameron's film True Lies, like, he commanded a huge salary. Now, he did have some missteps, like The Last Action Hero was a famous bomb.
But it was a tremendously entertaining film, in my opinion, on retrospect.
Oh, yeah?
I really enjoyed it, frankly. But I know why it wouldn't be popular, right? It's a skewering of the whole action genre, which was either not well done or before its time. I'm not sure, because it's been so long since I've seen it. But I recall seeing it. I enjoyed it tremendously.
So here's another machine being crushed by another machine being driven by a machine. So you've got a lot of repetitiveness there. And this is when he goes to kill Sarah Connor, which is the wrong Sarah Connor, but there's lots of Sarah Connors in the phone book. There must be tons of Dave Andersons in the phone book.
There's a lot more Dave Andersons than Sarah Connors, because there are 3 Sarah Connors in the LA phone book.
Yeah. For you millennials, a phone book is how you find Sarah Connor.
Good point.
Yeah. So, not to get too meta here, but we both read that book by the BFI.
Correct.
And he made a relationship between Arnie's automaton acting, and particularly in this scene, and then the robot from Metropolis. So the robot, I thought that was a very strange comparison.
I'm having a hard time seeing that myself.
Yeah.
It's one of those that the impassive killer, even though this was a relatively new movie and kind of in the public consciousness, it was reinvented so well in the early 80s that we thought it was new, that a kind of impassive killer thing has always been around. So drawing it to another machine, okay, I guess I can see it, but it's not that notable in my opinion.
When I think of it, like an impassive killer who is particularly a robot or a suspected personality like that, I actually think of Rutger Hauer from Blade Runner. I don't think of the Metropolis robot. She was actually a female who turned into a robot. And when I think of that, I'm more inclined to think of, the feminine voice of Hal in 2001, or specifically C-3PO, where is it not Kenny Baker?
Anthony Daniels.
Anthony Daniels, who's actually a very thin, very wiry form. I don't want to say anything controversial sexuality-wise, but I would say it's certainly just an effeminate form that's in that presentation of that robot. I don't see that related to the Terminator in any way, shape, or form.
I have a hard time, finding parallels with that in my end.
Yeah, now, these skulls were like golf balls, apparently, and this is one of those forced perspective tricks where it just makes it look like that skull is normal, and then the track behind it is just absolutely huge. But in fact, everything on here is miniature.
But it is, as much as anything, it once again demonstrates how a physical, actual object being filmed has a significant, impression in regards to it versus a digital creation. There's always a weight, even if the weight is 18 grams, it always looks more real, in my opinion.
It does. It reminds me of all those shots actually in Lord of the Rings where Gandalf and Frodo are in the same shot, and there's no special effects or visual effects at all in the film. It's the way that Peter Jackson is angling
just frames
the camera.
them and sits them, and the forced perspective. It's remarkably effective. Even if you watch again knowing it is sometimes easy to lose yourself in the effect itself.
Yeah, and if they move in any certain way out of order, particularly in Lord of the Rings, but even here, like if you had one piece of item move in a wrong way, everything would just look like an Escher painting just exploded or something. Like it would look so strange.
No, great. And, I don't know if this is one of those sequences or not that, for whatever reason, has... Oh, we're going to have to rewind. This does not work in my brain. No. But it's one of those, for some reason, that, even when I was a child, was really an impactful scene. Not necessarily any of the special effects or whatnot, but the way that the gal was blown up. It was a very... legitimately horrifying representation of warfare, which is, generally speaking, presented in mass entertainment as not that terrible. But it is one of those that, on that, it's pretty rough.
Well, it reminded me, that was exceptionally rough. Now, we are in this period where everyone is analyzing Vietnam a lot. It's only 1984. It's
like 15 years after the fact.
15 years after we pulled out of Vietnam. 11 years after the treaty with North Vietnam. And but there's not too much Vietnam going on in this film, actually. No. Like Aliens is different. Like that is
very much obviously inspired by at least the films of that age.
Right. But I didn't see that in this. And this actually reminded me, particularly the apocalyptic future, reminded me more of the Road Warrior, not Mad Max, but
the second Road Warrior, the Mad Max 2.
And how you were describing the body flying apart, like that to me was right out of the Road Warrior. You had bodies being dragged and torn, or that. Death Race 2000, or the Roger Corman movie with the kid who was getting pulled by tractor trailers, getting pulled apart.
That sounds like a pleasant experience that I haven't seen.
Yeah, I can't even remember the name of the movie, but it came to my mind.
Okay.
And it does grab your attention.
I always liked on this... Well, no, that's not accurate. I didn't always like, but upon rewatch, I appreciated how she was wearing a Jetsons t-shirt, right? Because you could make an argument after reading the book. She's representing the future, and then when you go to Rick Rossovich, who's Slider from Top Gun, who stinks, I'd seen your notes in regards to Einstein, which I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And is it one of those things where she's representative of the future, being a female, being stronger, whatever you want it to be, and he's, from a cultural criticism, representative of the past, is possible if you're an overstuffed... intellectual? Or is it one of those things where it's like the Jetsons was certainly on purpose, in my opinion, but it is one of those that you would never think about it?
No, I certainly didn't think about it until I saw it on the rewatch, and actually when I wrote it down in my notes, I wrote it wrong. I wrote the Flintstones. It's not the Flintstones.
It's almost the exact same show, but yeah, it's a very distinct difference.
Yeah, just a couple of thousand years.
Correct.
And Rossovich is wearing Einstein.
Yes.
Is that a joke? Because he just seems like an idiot.
He does seem like a meathead.
Yeah. Paul Winfield and Lance Henriksen. Again, great actors who had a great career.
Right, but we're obviously just taking a paycheck for this cheap, random, monster movie. But, they both put their all into it. And in my opinion, they are both actually much more effective as actors than the primaries in the movie.
Yeah. Much
more naturalistic.
Yeah, and Traxler, Paul Winfield plays Lieutenant Traxler, and he's popping pills in the scene, which I was, again, like, it doesn't make the... At first you think, well, this is a progressive LAPD. They have a black lieutenant. And then he starts popping pills.
And he plays right into the stereotype of the overworked, underappreciated, strung out, lieutenant.
Right. She's a maniac. I know. So going back to the Jetsons t-shirt, like this is also one of those moments where, I don't want to say people, who are people? They say, they do, who are they? But I remember being younger and people telling or having the attitude of, well, Linda Hamilton's not a sexy woman. I see her in that Jetsons shirt, and all I want to do at the age of 9 or 12 is take that off.
Right.
So there's a sexuality and a ambition there that she inspires in the audience, which is there and which is real.
Okay.
The lizard I don't get. Like I'm lost on the lizard.
Well,
if you can tell me what the fucking lizard means, I'll be happy.
Well, lizard's actually one of those perfect LA pets, right? It's not as perfect as a New York pet where you have no room to take your lizard for a walk, but in LA it's really true, right? I mean, everybody's packed on each other, everybody drives. Taking a dog for a walk when you have an apartment or a crammed-in house, it's sometimes not that straightforward to have a dog. And as we all know, lizards are better than cats.
Did you have a lizard when you lived in L.A.?
I had no lizard, but I did house sit for one of my buddy's pythons. There you go.
I don't even know what to go with that. I'm just going to leave that there. So 225, I have tried and I have failed to find any
significance
of 225 with it. But ever since The Shining, I've been trying like hell to find. I get in deep into numerology. Mm-hmm. What does that mean? What are they trying to say?
It means you're looking for something.
It means you're looking. There. Yeah, right. It means you're lost, is what it means. Okay. So the moped, did you see any mopeds when you lived out there?
Back I lived in, for the audience that they have already turned off the podcast, I'm sure. I went to college at USC and lived out in South Central Los Angeles, and that was way long ago now to think about it, almost 30 years. But I certainly wasn't considering it, so there may have been, but I don't recall. I rode my skateboard to class.
Powell Peralta or Sim Z?
It was Powell Peralta. It was a Tony Hawk model, and it was tremendous, and it got stolen. So everything about it.
So it was L.A.
It was totally L.A.
Okay. This has to be a set, but as a set, like I got to say, it looks great.
Yeah, it's really well done.
And I noticed that it was 9:20 when he opened the door in the hallway. It was 9:20 on that clock, and it looks like they're in that office. And there was a jump cut to inside, and then it's 9:20 on the clock on the wall here. So if nothing else, James Cameron's paying attention. 9:40. It was 9:40 in the hallway. That's what I meant to say.
Gotcha.
So there was Traxler popping pills. Now, Henriksen, what's your favorite Lance Henriksen movie?
Oh, I mean, it's got to be Aliens, right? As my favorite movie that he's in.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can positively identify my favorite Lance Henriksen movie, because I don't know if I've ever seen a Lance Henriksen movie, but...
Near Dark.
Good point. Touche. That is a tremendous film, actually. But, yeah, that is...
And Catherine Bigelow. Wasn't Catherine Bigelow married to James Cameron?
She was also married to James Cameron.
That was before he married Linda Hamilton.
But after he married Gail Ann Hurd.
So who was his first wife?
I thought it was Gail Ann Hurd.
Gail Ann Hurd. And then...
Linda Hamilton.
And then Catherine Bigelow?
Right.
Because the crew, not just the crew, but the actors from Near Dark is the same group from Aliens.
Yeah,
it's almost the same cast.
Yeah, it's almost the same cast, exactly, with the notable exception of Sigourney Weaver.
Right. Which she would have been great in that.
It actually would have worked out great.
Sigourney Weaver in anything.
That does pretty much work out.
That ups the game, I think, in my opinion. 2 execution style murders. What is this, a Pizza Hut? This is one of those things where you look and I know I try not to get hung up on this, but as I continue to do the podcast and I continue to look at films that are older, I look at things in the background that just like I've never been to a pizzeria in the last 20 years in which they give you a tray to put your pizza on. And finding the tubes in the background, and really? I was watching the Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3, and this guy's got like he's got a cold, and he's sticking this thing up his nose, and it's like a Vapo stick. My mother told me it's something that you do to fight your bad sinuses.
Okay, doesn't Star Pizza present their pizza?
I have not been to Star Pizza in. Well, no, Ben Sheffer and I had a beer there about a year and a half ago.
Really?
Yeah.
We'll digress.
Yeah.
Okay, but I think they do serve it on that, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. I think so. That's my memory.
Is it just because I've been in Canada for so long and then they don't do it up there? So
exactly.
It's a Canadian thing.
Oh, another one for the kids. This is what we call a pay phone. And what she's going to do here now is, quote, hang up. So when people say, hang up the phone, that's what they mean.
Not press a button. Yeah, I saw the Walkman earlier, but I think because of Guardians of the Galaxy 1 and 2, people know what a Walkman is.
Yeah, that's a lot more present in the public consciousness.
Yeah.
Creeper. So, I mean, in regards to this movie in particular, I mean, Michael Bain? I
thought it was Ben.
It probably is. I'm sure I'm butchering it. It's one of those names I've read but I've never heard anybody say. In this movie, I don't think he's very good, frankly, from an, quote, acting perspective, end quote. I mean, he's very effective in his role, but except for the parts where he's got to turn it up to 11, I don't think he's all that good. But it is one of those things where just from the physical performance, I think he's actually very effective in giving a certain degree of menace. Now, nobody who saw this movie thought he was really the Terminator.
Yeah.
There was really no misdirection to the audience.
But you didn't know if he was a good guy or a bad guy.
Correct. You weren't, unless you'd watch the previews, which I did watch the preview for this before I saw it.
Tech noir.
Which is I believe in the BFI book, they equate that phrase to James Cameron's general, movie making
like his genre
style, which I think is pretty apt, actually.
Except for Titanic.
Even then, there is a certain degree of technical pornography with it, right? When the ship's breaking apart, it is really well documented.
The structural,
right? And it's just this whole thing. I mean, and going down into the deep in the submarine and that whole part, it is really focused on that. Obviously, I don't know. He may be interested.
And the replay of the video in the beginning when they actually explain to you layman's terms what happened.
Right.
Well, that's interesting. Now, I did notice, I don't know if this is the case. I did research this, and I could not find it, but the chick who was taking the tickets at the club, it looks astoundingly like Bridget Nielsen.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I don't know if Arnie passes her again.
No, she just yells out, "Hey, that jerk didn't pay. She's got some tremendous calves.
She does. And, one of the things that... the Walkman's got the lasso on it.
Right.
Right. I had one of those.
The handbag of the 80s. Your Walkman.
But she gets this plate of food, and like she must get hungry after sex.
Oh,
she's an enormous plate of food.
She's famished.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting combination of food, for sure. She has peanut butter and bread, which makes, of course, sense. But then there's lunch meats and celery. And, yeah, I'm somewhat baffled. And a lizard.
Harvest wheats. Yeah, it was just always.
Oh yeah, it's
something I notice. It's
Yeah.
something I notice every time. And this guy, of course, is just passed out. Rick Rossovich. What was his handle in Top Gun?
It was Slider.
Yeah.
And Arnold killed that pillow. Made it pay for his crimes.
Right. Now, Rick Rossovich is actually he's pretty buff here, but I mean he's given. It seems like he is. The Terminator is supposed to be this unstoppable machine, but Rick Rossovich seems like he's giving him the go.
As much as can be done. Yeah.
Right.
I like how he left his socks on. That's pretty weird.
80s etiquette. Poor Rick. We will miss you.
Poor Rick, poor Ginger.
Yeah. So, why didn't he pull the gun earlier? There's this kind of... I know that's nitpicking.
No, but it's definitely just designed for, the entertainment for the audience, right?
Yeah.
There's a fight scene. Yeah, from a logistical and legitimate standpoint, it makes no sense, but it's entertaining.
No, Hollywood hasn't changed. You have a certain number of beats, you have a certain number of pages, and then you've got to have something happen if you're going to follow a story. And James Cameron wrote the script with Gale Ann Hurd.
Okay.
So they obviously structured the script in such a way as to get a certain amount of money.
Sure.
And they made very few changes to the script. And one of the changes that Cameron assented to was the producers wanted a romantic relationship between Michael Biehn and Linda Hamilton where there wasn't one before. It wound up being that it was a good thing that happened.
Yes, sometimes the producers know what they're talking about.
Right, because they would not have had a sequel.
Oh yeah, well it almost would have made
It would have made
a lot
no
less sense.
Right.
But I mean, you're right. There wouldn't. They would have figured some
Well,
way.
it would have
for a
been one of those
sequel,
corny
but-
things of remember then, back then, and we're going to shoot a little scene that should have been in the first film, which wasn't, and it's going to look a little off, and it's going to be awkward, but they didn't have to do that. But it was so cheap, the producers basically let him do what he wanted to do. Do you still have an address book?
No. I've actually finally gotten rid of it. It was probably about a year ago. And I've inputted everything into my phone, which I changed recently and lost a higher percentage of my contacts than I wanted to. So back to pencil and paper I go.
Tech noir. Okay. I thought
I do like how he knows it. Oh yeah, it's on Pico. It's like, okay.
Right.
Man, that guy is a Google.
But this is, cops. Cops know where clubs are.
Yeah, it means you can tell he's been pounding the streets for years now.
Yeah. Yeah, you imagine he's probably a 20-year guy by that point, for sure. And this scene just, I remember the first time. Again, you watch things differently when you're a kid.
Right.
This film, even today, seems really fast.
It does, yeah. It is well paced. It is actually almost, what's the phrase? True filmmaking. I can't remember what it is. Where it's almost 100% motion, like you were referencing earlier with Mad Max 2 or The Road Warrior. That is almost a silent film, and to a certain degree, this movie would be better if it truly was a silent film.
Oh well, yeah. So, Arnie has literally like 22 lines in this entire film. I think it's 74 words.
Yeah.
And most of it he speaks in the first hour. And I think after the first hour, there's like 3 lines and 7 words or something like that.
I think he kills more people than he
27 people is the kill count. So yeah, so if you want to break that down per word, I think it's 3 people per 3 words per person or something. Right. You've got me burning. I always like to pay attention to the
lyrics of the lyrics,
and see if it matches what's going on. But anyway, like I think of this as actually a very fast movie. It's fastly cut, and then you get to the tech noir scene. This is the only one that's actually like, other than a love scene, it's actually slow motion.
Correct.
So he slows down the camera. This guy with the piano tie. My brother had a piano tie.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
And every time I see the piano tie, I think of John Cusack. Not because I ever saw him in a piano tie, but when I think of a piano tie,
that's what you think of.
Yeah.
It is very much a signifier of the time and place.
So yeah.
And what's really interesting about this when I rewatched it, they both cock their guns. Why wouldn't they be 100% ready to go? And obviously it's for the dramatic action perspective, right, from a movie. But from a practicality standpoint, it makes no sense.
And I know that we are from Texas, and we have firearms, and we're more familiar with firearms. We come from a culture of firearms, and Hollywood actors not necessarily so much.
Right, or your regular old viewing public in New York City.
Right, yeah. And you look at Uzis. We know that's an Uzi. And
yes.
Maybe that was just more in the popular mindset at the time because
Uzi was the gun at the time.
Right.
For sure.
There are in a lot of them. But I do remember in Casino Royale, Daniel Craig's in the car and he's loading up at Walter PPK and he puts a silencer on it and there's like 4 clicks going on after the silencer is rotated onto the barrel. So you're kind of wondering, okay, well, there's a magazine, there's a slide,
right? There's
a safety. What's that 4th click?
Yeah, it makes no sense. But it sure sounds cool.
Yeah. It sounds cool and people, oh my God, is that not like a hair moment? Like he's just about to finish her off and...
Second time in about 20 seconds.
Yeah. Yeah, and then I wanted to go into like it's almost like a little bit like Sam's Peckinpah, like how Cameron slows the camera down when the action takes place in the club, and that's where I was getting into. Like this is a pretty fast movie; it goes by pretty fast, and the club scene is very slow. And you look at the amazement on her face of like that guy's getting back up. What is going on here? And that's her first indication that something weird is happening.
Right. I mean, the audience knows at this point, but yeah, certainly her perspective is well represented.
And it's just a very simple camera push-in. It's not like a deep pull or a. No. What's the Spielberg thing that he does with Brody on the beach?
The Hitchcock. I can't remember the
zoom,
name of it. Yeah.
Is it called the? It's not a zoom.
Well,
it's
they back out when they
the
pull
camera,
the camera
and they zoom in to
so,
focus.
Yeah,
it defies me now what it's called, but he didn't use one of them. Those are really hard to pull off.
Yeah.
Kevin Smith tried to do one in Dogma, and it was dog shit. I mean, I like Kevin Smith and I like his movies, but that particular camera
just didn't work.
Yeah, right through the windshield. He had acid. Arnie had acid on his jacket.
Oh, I thought he was on acid. Okay.
Oh, probably.
No, and I know they use a pneumatic arm for that effect, right? Because certainly you can't do that.
Well, no, I mean the reason his jacket is smoking is because they put acid on it so that it would smoke, and Arnie said some of that got into his eyes.
Oh.
Which is not cool.
It's not what you hope for.
From a safety standpoint. Man, he just looks.
But they do a good job of keeping the continuity, right? Okay, so this character has gone through these different events, and like the hair has been singed off, so the haircut changes. And there's some things like that I think they do really well that would be ignored in most other B or maybe even C movies.
No, you're right. You're right. There's a documentary on Netflix about Tom Papadopoulos, who is this sort of not even B movie. It was like a C movie.
Okay.
Guy who did stuff for cable and Skinamax, and he didn't care about any of that shit. Like
That's not relevant.
No, he was shooting movies in like 3 days, and it was basically like how many women can I get in a room with their tops off, and that's why they call him Tom Papatopoulos.
Oh, okay.
Because you pop the tops.
There are worse jobs. I have one of them.
Right, but the difference between that and this is
there's a market difference.
Right, but we're not talking about a whole lot of budgetary difference.
Correct.
Actually, like, not that Papatopoulos had $4 million, but he probably had two.
Right. No, the ambition for this movie is definitely A, but the budget maybe B.
Right. That is crazy driving. I don't care if it's 2:00 in the morning in West Hollywood.
That would
That's
be quite
crazy.
challenging.
Yeah, I mean, driving on a sidewalk like that, and you see it, and everybody. I don't know what movie did it first. It's one of those things like when we saw Ronin. I think you and I saw Ronin together.
I think that's right.
'96 with Lockie.
Sounds about right.
And the wives, and they go against the flow of traffic on the Seine, and then from then on, every movie shot in Paris that has a car chase must have counterflow traffic.
Well, the one I remember it from, which I don't know if this is taken from at all, was To Live and Die in L.A.
Oh, driving on the sidewalk?
No, that was one where it was totally counter. There was the whole freeway chase scene, which was really effectively done, where he's driving counter to traffic on the freeway.
Oh, man, I haven't seen that in 20 years. I love that movie, though.
It's also something we're going to have to double check, because if I'm wrong, I want this part edited out. It's like, dumbass didn't know what he's talking about.
Unlikely. I love that movie, William Peterson. And
oh, this does remind me, though, because this, I believe, is an LTD2 from Ford. And my buddy had a 1977 LTD2, and I can promise you, from experience, car doesn't handle like this. So this is definitely a souped-up version. Or maybe this is the Lincoln. Oh, is that a Caddy?
Well,
they all kind of look the same.
Well, so the back end of it, that looks like a Lincoln, and then the side view that you were just talking about, it looked like an LTD. It looks like the model of the car is changing.
Of course, Lincoln and Ford are essentially the same vehicle.
Well, they are, but they got a different.
They do have a different badging.
Body, yeah. No, this cop car, that's a Dodge. That's a Bluesmobile. That's just what they had for 20 years. See, that is not an LT. That looks like a Buick or something.
You might be right. They all kind of look the same.
But the editing is so fast, and the lighting is such that you're actually not paying. I mean, you'd have to stop it to pay attention to something like that.
Oh, sure.
Or watch it like so many times.
That you are way too obsessed.
Yeah.
But, I mean, this...
Which we are.
Which we are. And so right here you have a little bit of exposition, which for the most part of the movie doesn't exist, right? You just get dropped in, and here's the story, and this is what happens. And the exposition is done visually. But this is one of the few times where they actually talk, and I think this is one of those moments where Michael Bain, I don't think at this point in his career, or maybe the direction at this particular time by Cameron, was all that good. It struck me as very stilted and just kind of inauthentic. That being said, still a good movie.
Yeah, I think about his other characters, and unfortunately, his career with Cameron is what really sticks out in the mind. Aliens, of course, he plays Hicks, and then The Abyss,
right,
he plays Coffee. And both of those roles, he doesn't have a whole lot of dialogue.
No.
If you think of 5 out of 10, what are your Michael Bay films? They're all those 3 Cameron films.
Yeah, there's going to be that, and maybe, if you're a freak, The Rock.
The Rock?
Yeah, the Michael Bay movie, The Rock.
With Sean Connery and John Cusack and Nicolas Cage?
Right, and the one that,
He's in that?
Yeah, he's the SEAL leader.
Well, I don't think I've seen that since the theater. Like, I try not to see...
You don't have the Criterion edition of The Rock?
No, I don't.
You're missing out.
No, let me check the shelf real quick. No, and no fucking Armageddon either.
Oh.
Which I think I borrowed from you.
Well, we're going to pause on this conversation.
But I didn't realize he was in. I tried not to watch any Michael Bay film at all, and if I do, I try to just limit that to once. But that's just my Edwin bias.
What about Pain and Gain?
Say what?
Pain and Gain.
Pain and Gain.
Yeah, it had The Rock and Mark Wahlberg.
No, I skipped that one too. I didn't even know that existed.
Fucking good, man.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's
good. Is it like the Runaround?
No, it's not like...
Isn't
like
the Runaway? The Rundown. Yeah. With
no, it's actually kind of one of those where, you hear of different filmmakers who do these big movies, kind of like Spielberg, but obviously not, right? But he'll do a big movie, and then he'll do a personal movie.
Sure.
And this is kind of Michael Bay's version.
And John Huston was famous for
Right.
doing that. Yeah.
And it's just one of those. And no, Pain and Gain is a bizarrely entertaining movie. It's got a lot of the different Michael Bay flourishes where there's slow motion and low shots and everything else, but there is a really twisted and evil sense of humor in that movie that makes it well worth watching.
Oh, man. I got to look that up. Is Michael Benn in that one?
I don't believe he is, but you do get to see The Rock barbecue a hand.
Oh, that I'm in.
Like on a grill. It's pretty amazing.
I'm in.
Obviously not set in Texas, otherwise you'd be smoking it.
So one thing I noticed about this particular scene is you were just talking about the exposition where Ben just goes through, pay attention. I remember being a kid, and those were the conversations in sci-fi films that I most paid attention to. Like the scene in Blade Runner where Deckard's going through the 3D picture and pan right, pan left, drop down 30 degrees, turn to the right. And when they're talking about the Voight-Kampff test, and I mean, that sci-fi talk, it's almost, you don't get any of that in Star Wars because that's more fantasy.
Right. But I mean, to a certain degree, it's kind of like in ER where they just throw out this medical gobbledygook.
And you have no idea
which you have no idea what it means, but in the context, you kind of understand.
Yeah.
Right? Or you recognize, okay, it's not important that I know exactly what it means.
Or L.A. Law when they're talking about, double jeopardy in the 5th article and 19th clause. And you're like, oh, that's so cool.
That's good. And Alex Trebek says, what is random, things for 1,000?
Yeah. So that makes total sense to me. That really drew me in. And even now, I think it captivates the imagination.
Yeah, I might have to recant some of my earlier statements that maybe it's more effective. And I liked how they, on this one, again, paid attention to continuity where you see the bite marks on the hand, which in a lot of movies, they would just blow it off.
Wouldn't bother.
Even if it was just a C rate. This one, okay, they pay attention. It matches a bite mark, which is not one of those things that makes the movie, but kind of helps explain why it elevated above just your standard pulp. It's not the Exterminator. It's the Terminator.
Right.
What was the other? Invasion USA, something along those lines.
Oh my God, yes.
Which are just god awful.
Well, I don't understand. We talk about, there are a few authors who wrote about the 80s in the 90s. Susan Jeffords, Kaja Silverman, and they talked about the hypermasculinity. And we talked before about how I didn't necessarily believe that to be true. I thought that was an unfair characterization of the 80s. And I love 80s films. I think it's very self-reflexive.
Yeah.
And very much like a mirror into our times and America's soul and all of our problems and all of our solutions and our outlook on life. But you look at something like First Blood and what a just fucking awesome film that is from start to finish and top to bottom.
Right.
And then you follow it up with something like Rambo.
Which is absurdity.
Yes, absurdity, but not bad.
It's well executed absurdity.
Yes, yeah. And then Rambo 3 is just
that's poorly
bad,
absurdity.
Right?
Yeah.
But I'm trying to think of a single Chuck Norris film that's not bad. It may be entertaining, but
that's not bad.
Good Guys Wear Black or Invasion USA or it's just.
Are you looking for one that's actually good?
Like a good Chuck Norris movie.
Okay.
It just. I just don't think there is one. But if you think of Schwarzenegger, you know his good movies. You know his bad movies. You know his mediocre movies.
I think Lone Wolf McQuade may be a good Chuck Norris movie. Maybe.
Oh, man.
Maybe.
And when I was a kid, there was no cooler movie than Lone Wolf McQuade.
Another Orion movie.
Orion Pictures?
Yeah.
They were a brilliant organization while they lasted. I watched the shit out of Orion.
Well, this movie itself, I think, really was the first that I can recall. This and Blade Runner, like you referenced earlier, where it had the Ladd Corporation.
Yeah.
Where I kind of paid attention to that type of stuff. And if it was an Orion movie, because one of the other famous movies or at least more notable movies in my brain for Orion was RoboCop, right?
Yeah.
Which this is
in that same
and you
vein.
can totally see it being a parallel universe future of the Terminator, right? One future goes Terminator 2, the other future goes RoboCop. Conceptually, you can kind of imagine that. At least I can.
Yeah.
So same milieu, if you will. And they made a lot of pulp movies. They made some good movies, because I can't remember what it was, but they made more than a handful of, like, literally good movies. But a lot of them were these kind of B-rate, B-budget is a better way to put it, movies that I think were still a step above even some of the A-rated action movies, because I remember watching some big A-rated action movies from the 80s, and they were freaking not good.
Right.
They're not good.
No, I think there's a lot to that, and I think I wouldn't call it so much of a genre as, or even a style, but I don't know what you would call it, but you think of all the shit that Golan Globus put out.
Oh, yeah, it's not good.
All of that is in the same barrel.
Yeah.
Right? Cross-genre, cross-style, but you watch a Golan Globus movie, you know what you're getting. Right.
It's a good indicator of your entertainment level for that night.
Yeah, but Orion, they put out great film. Didn't they do a Silence of the Lambs? That was like their last picture before they went bankrupt.
Yeah, you might be right. You probably are.
Because I remember, like, I think that they filed, and like the next week they got the Oscar, or Jonathan Demme got the Oscar for
very possible
Silence of the Lambs.
Very possible.
And there's always the struggle, just like Reese is struggling with the three on the tree. There's always a struggle between, it's as old as von Sternberg and Orson Welles, of the balance between art and
popular entertainment.
Right. And Hitchcock was always about the masses.
Right. And he was really one of the masters. I mean, it's overdone, and it's not like I'm breaking new ground, but he was certainly a master. Kind of like Spielberg, right? It's like, this is a good movie, but it's still important. In quotes.
Right, and I don't, as far as like the deeper meaning of the Terminator, I don't think that there is one necessarily.
No, I tend to agree. I don't know if there is you can interpret a lot,
right,
in retrospect, but I don't believe for a second when they made this that it was an overreaching objective to become a definitive statement and critique of our future.
No, I think they just wanted to make a great movie.
Yeah, let's make, here's a big guy. He shoots things.
Yeah.
It's cool.
I mean, this look at this scene here. Like, this is right out of Hill Street Blues. The entire police station scene just...
But even that shot right there was really good, because you got Lance Henriksen, who's yawning in the background.
Yeah.
You got Paul Winfield who's paying attention, and then the creepy psychologist who is doing a great job playing creepy.
Yeah, it looks like he needs a bra.
Right. But it's really well framed. I don't know for certain, but I'm pretty sure that the version we're watching on Vudu is cropped. I want to say this was 235 to 1, and this is being presented.
No, I think you're correct.
So I mean,
and Voodoo's guilty of that.
Yeah, but it's one of those things that usually when you're shooting at that ratio, you're making a legitimate, objective of like, okay, I'm going to make quote art, end of quote.
Right. It must be widescreen. If it's not widescreen, it's not art.
Right, and I think
that's bullshit. Citizen Kane is a square.
I don't know if I agree with it. I greatly prefer scope.
Well, no, so do I. So do I. But like Eyes Wide Shut and The Shining, that's like 4:3 or something.
Yeah, but it's one of those where I find Kubrick a very frustrating filmmaker.
Well, you're not the only.
I'm not unique. I know. Once again, breaking new ground. Oh my God.
Yeah, I love Kubrick, but yes, he's very problematic.
And it is one of those where a lot of the things that I like, right, he seems to disregard. I mean, the only big scope one that I can think of is 2001. That doesn't mean I'm right. That's the only one I can think of immediately.
No, I think that is right.
But
Spartacus. But that's almost not.
But Spartacus
like
almost
film.
isn't a Kubrick film, right?
Yeah. 2 weeks into shooting. Okay, so
back to notes.
Yeah, so okay, the arm. I wanted to bring this up because, like, is this not right out of Empire Strikes Back?
Oh, absolutely, 100%.
Okay,
100%.
So it wasn't just me, because even when I was a kid, I was like, oh, that's a complete fucking ripoff from Empire.
Exactly, yeah, because you got the same pistons and everything else. I think it's probably pretty darn close to an identical, replicate of the model.
Yeah. And then the absurd psychiatrist, Earl Bowen, by the way, he's the psychiatrist. He's done so much TV, it's crazy. He has 271 acting credits on his IMDb.
I would have bet the under.
Yeah.
No, that's not true.
But watching this, it's almost, and we know that Cameron and Gail Ann Hurd, we shouldn't always just say Cameron, like she wrote half the script, supposedly, and she contributed to the script, and she was the producer. It was just as much her movie as it was Cameron's movie. So there's a play going on with the psychoanalysis. He's seen as an idiot.
Yeah, I don't know if much. I don't know if he's looked at it from my perspective as an idiot as much as an opportunist, right?
Oh,
because he is definitely, my impression is, or my imagination is a better way to put it, is I can see him writing a book in 5 years
about this incident.
These are
he pops up in T2,
right? But it's also one of these. These are the loons I've interviewed, or maybe that's just the way. If you ended up talking to these individuals who have some overactive imaginations, I'd get numb to it, right? And I would do it for my own entertainment, for sure.
Yeah, but at the same time, there's also this play. It's almost like not a play on words, but it's like a balance imbalance going on where he says, all Reese is doing is making up shit to create his own world so that he can feel comfortable,
right?
And
while you don't need any evidence,
right? And in that same conversation, what you see is oh yeah, the eye thing.
I've got an eye thing. This I can't.
You can't. It's like the Malays. Have you seen the Malays picture with that they did with Salvatore Dali?
Yeah.
Like in 1922, when they dragged the straight razor across the eyeball.
Well, a lot of it goes back to a movie that I remember when I was a kid, and my memory. The name of the movie is The Eyes of Laura Mars, right? Starring Faye Dunaway.
No.
Yeah, and a babysitter at the time let us watch it on HBO back when HBO first came on. And my memory is that there was a scene that played homage to it. I don't think it was a De Palma film, but it was the same type of thing. Where it's like, I'm going to ape this stuff and call it an homage. And there was a razor blade across the eye, and it's just like, oh, that was it for me.
Now, we can laugh about the head now, but back then,
back then it looked fake, but
practical,
right? And it looked as good as you could get at the time.
Yeah,
and it's still better than a lot of CGI, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, he looks better with the glass. Like if they had just left the glasses on, you really it would have passed so much better.
Oh yeah, and I wanted a pair of gargoyles for at least 10 years after this movie.
Yeah, I was into Oakleys, not gargoyles.
I don't know. When this movie came out, totally wanted.
AK-74 with a fast mag, duct tape, retractable stock.
Okay, I'm going to defer to your knowledge on the AK-74.
Only because of Call of Duty.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
The 74 model. That would have been 1984. Yeah, that would have been the 74 model. Because now they're on like the 96 or whatever. It's all the 47. It's all the 47. It's just what revision. It's kind of like I got into an argument with a guy the other day about he's going into the Army, and he was like, "So you still using the M16?" It's like, "Oh, actually, no. It's the
whatever it is,
the M14E or something." But really,
but it's an M16.
It's an M16.
Yeah, this is the 1911. It's still a 1911.
It's still a 1911 45. Yeah.
Now, see this. Earlier, I was somewhat criticizing him, not shitting on Michael Baine's performance, but I do think that this scene, and when he was getting interviewed prior, and even Lyndall Hamilton, who I don't think is very good in this movie for the most part, when they actually have to go this over the top, I think they're really good at those points.
Yeah.
Because I do think that this is, remember watching this when it was on VHS when I was much younger, I mean, I got a certain degree of anxiety watching this.
Watching him slowly lose his mind.
Right. And just there's a certain franticness, which I think it totally makes sense. And I think it does very well.
And biting your fingernails.
Yeah.
No, and it almost looked like there's eye contact. Mm-hmm. And there's an escalation to it.
Right.
Hollywood Babylon, Kevin Smith's podcast with Ralph Garman. Yeah. They've got a segment that they do every Friday night, which is called Exquisite Acting.
Okay.
And you can nominate anybody but Nick Cage, because it would be like the entire career of Nick Cage would be exquisite acting. It's you've got good acting, and then sometimes it goes all the way around to exquisite. And so every time I see someone go over the top,
where does Al Pacino fall in that?
So all
from
a
Devil's...
Scent of a Woman would all of that would
what
be.
What was first, Devil's Advocate or Scent of a Woman?
I think it was Scent of a Woman.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because at that point he did fuck it, I'm going to 11.
Right. Yeah.
Get killed by rocking your doggy.
Yeah, but at the same time, like we say that, but I wouldn't take anything out of Heat.
No, I wouldn't either. No, but it's one of those things. I was watching The Godfather with my daughter maybe a month and a half ago.
So understated.
And she had, exactly. He was so restrained. It's hard to believe it's the same dude.
Yeah, well, Luke couldn't believe it. Like, we watched Heat first, and it was like a year passed, and then we watched The Godfather, and Luke refused to believe that was the same person.
Yeah, because he looks different, he acts different, he is different. We're not watching the Terminator at all. We should probably focus back on it. Okay, so here's...
I thought this gag was funny. Go ahead.
No, I'm about to say, this is,
He's walking out, and the Terminator walks right behind him. And I didn't pick that up when I was a kid. I was just into the film. Like, I didn't see the irony of that situation.
But this is the beginning of, from our age group especially, what we remember about the Terminator is this whole sequence.
Yeah.
And I'll Be Back is the first time I know he had other, quotes in the Conan movies like...
Oh, the Lamentations of the Women.
Lamentations of the Women. But, I mean, this was the first time anybody took him seriously.
Yeah.
At least... from that perspective, at least my perspective.
Yeah, well, to be fair, Conan was a cartoon. It was a comic book. It was based on the comic book. It was
played like a comic book.
It was played like a comic book. There was, I didn't know that it was a comic book at a time, but it's definitely a comic book movie.
Oh yeah,
and you weren't supposed to take it seriously, but you were supposed to be involved in the story. And Terminator is very much in the same vein, in my opinion. It's like Terminator's a comic book movie, even though there's not a comic book.
Right,
it's like a graphic novel.
It could have been.
It could have been a comic book, right.
All right, so this is the part from the BFI book that I remember reading, and I think some of your comments previously were, why do we find this whole sequence so compelling?
It's unbelievable.
But, the action is actually shockingly well done, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. You get the impact of the physical impact of the bullets and the physicality, which isn't always presented like this. You see a recoil when the guns are shot. This to me, when you were speaking about Peckinpah earlier, kind of makes me think more that there's a certain realism at play here that makes it feel authentic but not horrifying, right? Because to a certain degree, everybody wants to be the Terminator when watching this movie, and everybody's obviously very broad, but I've never wanted to shoot up a police station by any stretch of the imagination. I've never wanted to shoot up anything, but the impression that Schwarzenegger in this performance gives and the way it's framed is, okay, he's just unstoppable.
Yeah.
Right? In a way that isn't cartoonish. He's just like, Halloween I love.
Yeah.
Phenomenal movie. And Michael Myers in that movie was certainly unstoppable, but it wasn't the same thing here. Where this kind of embodied, it's like, fuck it, I can do anything.
Yeah.
Which I think, for me, but it's one of those that I have no idea why it's so addictive, right? Because everything about it is like not stuff that I support.
No, certainly not.
But it's one of those that I can watch this scene about 35 fucking times.
It's certainly rewatchable, and I hope they eventually cover it on the Rewatchables podcast with Bill Simmons, but... this is a mass murder. There's no difference between this and Elephant. If you've ever seen that,
I've not seen that.
It's just about a school shooting.
Isn't that Gus Van Sant?
Yeah,
okay, I've not seen it.
And I remember being a kid, like, holy fuck, man! Like, he's mowing down cops by the dozen.
Right.
It was certainly shocking back then to youth, and even my parents. They didn't like the Terminator. They didn't want me watching the Terminator.
And I understand why.
Yeah, it's not. And this is, despite his track record to date, this is when you're really like, no, this is a bad guy.
Yeah.
He is certainly...
Yeah, he is certainly not a hero. And he's probably not even an anti-hero at this point. No, it's true villain. And I guess maybe that's as much as anything. It really defines his power.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I like everyone else that I know, this is the best part of the movie.
Yeah, no, it is. It is. And I'm
not for conventional reasons.
And I'm a huge fan of the sex scene. But this is the best part of the movie.
Man, those are some mom genes she has, though.
Yeah, well, they were all...
Yeah, and that's...
The evolution of the blue gene. You can see it in...
There could be a documentary.
There should be.
There might be.
Netflix probably has it.
Netflix has it.
And Netflix has everything.
Has the Terminator. Does the flipped over taped magazines actually work, or doesn't that potentially cause your weapon to jam more often?
It depends on what you're resting it on.
Yeah, fair enough.
Like I wouldn't do it in a like if you see I had 4 cousins that served in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Right, and I've just got one.
Yeah, and
You win.
Yeah, yeah. Well, one of them was like an engineer, so Army Corps of Engineers. So he did his opinion almost didn't matter because he never shouldered his weapon. You know, he was designing shit. But the other 3 and 2 of them were combat soldiers. You know, they never touched anything that came out of Call of Duty. They never used fast mags. They never used duct tape.
Not real.
They never put their fucking blood type on duct tape on their shoe like you hear the special forces guys do. You know,
well, see, my one cousin who does have that experience, my uncle and his son, my cousin, they were both. My uncle was a Green Beret, and then my cousin was he was a Ranger. I apologize, Ranger, and then a sniper.
Yeah,
but
don't
it's still
be calling the English Scots and the Scots English.
Yeah, but it's also one of those things where it's not like we talk about it.
No.
Right, no. So I just don't know. And I don't know why that mattered to me at that particular moment, but it was always one of those things that when I was a kid and played guns, yeah, you would be taping your mags because it is fucking badass.
Yeah, the whole police station and lots of Steadicam shots. There's lots of those in this whole movie. It just gives the whole film like a look of fluidity.
Right.
And you had Steadicam before this. I think they perfected it for Jedi. For the slow motion shots through Indoor, which they played back at a faster rate. I think that was.
Oh no, you're mistaken. I apologize. I'm going to have to disagree. It was perfected with the club scene in Goodfellas.
Oh.
I mean that's
it's 88. Was it 87?
Yeah, whenever it actually was 87, 89. I mean, Jedi was a huge.
Well, perfected. I mean, in a technical sense, like they walked on the floor of a forest and they played it back, and it looked like you were just.
True,
the
floating.
Fluidity of it, the floatingness of it. Now, in terms of like use to create a scene, yeah, that restaurant scene in Goodfellas that's
still shocking.
Oh my god! And I'll get into arguments with people about the crane shot in the opening of A Touch of Evil, that versus the Goodfellas,
or the player.
Or the player, yeah, the opening shot of the player. Well, that should be in the league with A Touch of Evil.
Okay,
they actually mentioned A Touch of Evil in.
It was probably just aping it on purpose.
Yeah.
I mean, Altman, I think, was saying, okay,
let's
do that.
We'll do that, yeah, of course. But, that one in Goodfellas. And there's not any long Steadicam shots in the Terminator at all.
No.
But his use of the Steadicam
is really well done.
Particularly in the police station when it zooms in on him. Not zoom is the wrong word. It steadies in on him and then tracks back. And he cuts left, cuts right. And it creates a certain amount of tension.
Right, and it's unlike Goodfellas, which I love, and The Player, and Touch of Evil. It's not showy. It's just effective and efficient.
Well, and that's what... the Terminator is full of those types of shots. And when I think of the Terminator, when I think of Alien, when I think of The Abyss, and even True Lies, and I love those films. Not a fan of Titanic, not a fan of Avatar, but...
Not a fan or don't love?
Don't love.
Okay.
Yeah. But I will recognize that those films, even the ones I don't like, are such high quality.
Oh yeah. He's definitely a master craftsman. He's an artisan.
Yeah. I mean, something simple like this, we're talking about close-ups.
He's
just simple close-ups, and look what he did. What would another director do? Would they put it at a 45-degree angle to the wall like this? Probably not. And then the medium, he tracks back to a medium. He's going to go back to,
No, he is. I mean, Cameron is really effective in my opinion, making pop entertainment, and that's not a criticism.
Yeah. No,
that's got a big place. And yeah, if you compare him to Michael Bay, who I do conceptually like, right? Because there are some Michael Bay films which I do enjoy. It's not very many. It's 2. But, there are... who was it? McTiernan, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Cameron and McTiernan, in my mind, are not all that different in that the movies they made, for the most part, were not, quote, important, end of quote, but they were the best you could do at that.
Man, right? I don't know. When I think of McTiernan, if you want to go like head to head with Cameron, I can think of specific McTiernan shots that just blow me out of the fucking water.
Right. No, I'm not necessarily comparing, but more just aligning them in the same. They're outstanding at what they do.
Yes.
And what they do is
the talent.
They're not trying to make anything that's Oscar bait, with the notable exception of Titanic, right? But it's as well shot and as well built as almost anything. McTiernan will never be remembered, but is he less skilled of a filmmaker as almost anyone you can think of?
No.
Yeah, I mean, he's not less skilled, in my opinion, than Bergman. His movies aren't as good necessarily, but I mean, they're just as skilled. I mean, they're little puzzle boxes, and they're tight.
Yeah.
I mean, there are rarely things where you go, oh, that was kind of fucked up. I'm gonna get skewered on some Scandinavian message board, I'm sure, for that one. Probably
it's
not,
inevitable.
I'm sure I won't.
He's still alive.
Bergman?
Yeah.
Is he?
Yeah.
I believe you.
He's 90-something. So.
Okay.
So here we flash forward, and this is the same set. This is the same.
We're jumping
16
ahead,
by
11,
3.
11 years to right now. So what, 2029?
Right. Yeah.
Oh,
so
years.
did they choose 2029 because it was just 10 years ahead of 2019, and they didn't want to be like Blade Runner?
I don't know. I mean, if I was making a movie such as this, I don't know when I'd want to put that date, because you're always wrong.
Yeah.
But this is one thing I wondered about when I was watching this movie. Okay, so we're going to go way on a tangent because this is going to be unusual for this conversation. Skynet, not real, right?
Right.
But in this movie, if you were going to say Skynet is, who would you say Skynet is on this? Is this Google? Is this Amazon?
Facebook.
This is Facebook. Okay.
Yeah.
So I thought about this, and I was thinking, okay, the Matrix in my mind is totally Apple, right?
Yes.
In dystopian futures, okay, who wins? And I don't know if this is Facebook, because it's not that interested in knowing you and controlling you as much as it is, killing you.
Well, the Terminator mimics human behavior and creates a way to hunt you down using knowledge about you.
Right.
So,
that's more, in my mind, that's Google.
Oh man, I don't know.
I love Android phones, and that's what I got. But Google is creepy.
Well, no, Google is creepy because it knows where you are at all times. I get that, but Facebook is the same. Like
right.
Facebook is so bad. Google kicked it off last week.
Well, yeah.
I mean, I'm not on Facebook, and people say I get tweeted stuff like, why don't you have a Facebook page? And
from what I can tell, I promise you're somehow on Facebook. I don't know what that is. Like, I'm not on Instagram. I'm not on Facebook, but I'm aware they're the same thing, right? So it's something telling me that the odds are pretty good that some app that I use is actually owned by Facebook, and I'm inadvertently on it. So you got The Matrix, you got Blade Runner, you got The Terminator, you got Logan's Run, you got these different dystopian, mechanically influenced futures. And actually, I think Facebook is actually probably more Mad Max. Just total chaos. And, it's like, man, that looks cool. But when you look at it and go, oh, that's freaking terrible.
Well, yeah, they do seem to have a lack of organization over there.
Yeah.
Okay,
so to the Polaroid.
And before actually we got here, there was an astounding use of back projection when he was outside, which is a very, very cheap
but
effective use. And he uses it again in T2 and even in later films. And it works out great.
Does it ever look realistic, though?
Never.
Okay.
Never.
But, I mean, it's a conceit, right? And we're always able to go, okay, it doesn't look right, but I'm willing to do it.
Well, I remember, you're right, and I remember a particular scene in a Lethal Weapon 2 when Riggs is driving over the, I think it's the Long Beach Bridge.
And he shoots the dogs. Fucktard.
Yeah. Well, that's how bad the Terminator is.
It's very bad.
You don't shoot. Come on, man.
They're German Shepherds, for God's sakes.
I'm not a pet lover, but I'm a respecter of animal rights.
And I'm at your house and you have 3 pets.
I do. My kids have 3 pets.
But okay,
I have a dog. I have a dog.
Right. So this is something else I was wondering, right? Because almost all, there are 3 flash forwards in this movie?
Yeah.
Okay. So at least 2 of them, there is Reese on the edge of death.
Oh my God, that looks badass.
That does look bad. And I remember that from the preview being one of those things. Like, I got to go see it.
Oh, man. How can you not?
Right. But, so do you think these are real memories of the future? Because they're always on the edge of fire, going to die, doesn't show... I don't know if it matters.
Well, I mean, I chalk it up to, and this kind of touches on the Vietnam issue, which we know this movie's not about, but I mean, Reese has severe PTSD.
Yeah.
He has been at war his entire life. It's the only thing that he knows. He has these little memories of when he was a kid and how things kind of were, which you kind of see him use, like, oh, shoes, oh, shirts, oh, I need to do that. But other than that, like he's even like in this scene here where he's holding the gun and he's walking around, he just looks like a severely psychologically scarred vet.
Well, and he absolutely is.
That's what I took that from.
Yeah, no, I think you're
He's
right.
known no kindness except for what Sarah Connor has given him.
Right, and is, John Connor.
Right.
He's got a hero worship, not unreasonable under the circumstances.
Does this guy not look like some fucked up version of Bob Hoskins?
He absolutely does.
Does he not need to shave his shoulders?
So there's this guy and, what's his name from Cheers? Dan Hedaya.
Oh, God.
From a body hair Hall of Fame, I don't know which one's getting in first.
Dan Hedaya.
Yeah, have you seen Alien Resurrection?
Yes.
And it's like the tank top and the hair.
Mikasa Sukasa.
And it's like, I'm bald, and I'm very thankful I'm bald relative to having this pelt.
Yeah, he's Carla's first husband.
These guys get spit on by PETA members. It's like, you're wearing fur. It's like, no, I'm just gross. Oh, okay.
So they're at the Tiki Motel, so I'm guessing this is their paradise, right?
Oh,
I mean, they do make love here, so there's a Galaga machine in the background.
There is a Galaga?
Yeah, it was through the window.
Love Galaga.
Oh, I'm Galaga fanatic.
Well,
you also like Tempest.
Absolutely.
Yeah. My God, the red door. I see a red door and I want it to paint it black. Anytime I see a red door in a movie, I think that because there's actually no red doors in real life. You can't really.
I can't remember any. No.
Not even at hotels.
No, especially not on the inside.
So when you see a red door in a film, it just makes you think like, okay, this is a set.
Right, but why would they paint it red?
Yeah. It's very curious.
And that may mean something. I don't know what.
It just looks odd.
It does.
But in this particular shot with it behind him, that's his escape route and he should take it. He's drawing your eyes to it for a reason. And Cameron did that for a reason.
Yeah, it's definitely on purpose.
Yeah. No, what that purpose is.
It's escaping me at this moment.
That gun is huge in her hand. She's so petite. She's so small.
She has to be a teeny individual.
I didn't look up her height or anything because I mean, believe it or not, like I'm not celebrity obsessed. I don't want to know about.
No, but I'd be stunned if she's taller than 5'2".
Right. We had this conversation a couple of weeks ago about how like I'm into the Cranberries and I was sad that Dolores O'Riordan had passed away, but I don't know anything about Dolores O'Riordan's life. I don't want to know anything about it. Like I appreciate her and her music and her talent. And
right.
I'm not interested in I didn't even know the order of James Cameron's wives.
Well, I remember that not because I'm a creepy stalker, but because I remember stupid things.
Right. Well, if I knew it when I was younger, it's staying in there. And
absolutely.
And I read a lot of shit in the 80s. I know everything that there is to conceivably know about Orson Welles.
Question. Yeah. All right. So, based on when he's impersonating Sarah Connor's mother,
yes,
and other parts throughout the movie, he is able to, mimic perfectly a voice. Why did the program, Skynet, tell him to speak with this particular accent?
Yeah, the Austrian.
I'm kind of surprised he wasn't dubbed the entire movie.
No, I agree. That's always kind of that's always given me pause for thought because they dubbed him in Hercules. Right. Yeah. They dubbed and another one was Flash Gordon.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Sam Jones?
Sam Jones was completely dubbed in the entire film.
Okay, so why do I remember Sam Jones's name? You can't be more pedestrian and unmemorable. And for some reason, I remember that. Is this a Ducati?
Oh.
It can't be.
Probably.
You think?
You could have stolen the Ducati.
Could have.
Terminator can steal anything.
Well, the Terminator certainly could, yes. It's not beyond his
He
capabilities.
didn't even have to stab me. He can just fucking take whatever he wants out of my pocket or my bike or my life. I don't,
I like your Italian sports bike.
Yeah,
I want it now.
Bruno Mali shoes is perfectly fine with me.
So this is a very familiar trope, right? Well, trope is probably the wrong word for it, but the prep.
Yeah.
We're getting everything ready for the great conflict to come.
Yeah, but there's no this is a perfect time for a montage.
And
there's no montage in
There's
Terminator.
no montage.
And I can't remember one in Titanic. I'm trying to remember one in
I don't remember either.
in Abyss. Like it's
not
montages tend to stand out. Like when I think of Real Genius, for example, with Val Kilmer, there's 2 montages in there that are just like outstandingly familiar.
But he doesn't do it in this.
No. He chooses not to. And it could be because he doesn't need to. He doesn't feel like he needs to. The story doesn't need it.
And it doesn't. You don't need a training sequence montage, although it would be pretty awesome. Terminator 2 doesn't have one either, although you could certainly argue that one should have been in there, and I'm glad they didn't put it there.
This is the most messed up her hair gets in the whole film.
And it's pretty brutal. I'm judging from a person who has no hair, so
I mean, I know
I would love to have this challenge, but I don't have it.
But having said that, like I'm not saying I'm not going to look at Linda Hamilton if she has bad hair. I will look at Linda Hamilton. I remember watching Beauty of the Beast, which was a huge show after this
Ginormous.
that she was on, just because she was in it. I don't remember anything else about that show other than I'm going to watch it because she's in it. And I was probably the only kid who thought that or who did that, right? Because it is a chick show.
But it was a huge hit.
Yes.
It was definitely big, and I'm sure part of it was Ron Perlman, right?
Oh, yes.
But it's probably, as much as anything, Linda Hamilton.
Which is another one. And they have similar career tracks.
I think Ron Perlman really found his zone, right?
Yeah.
And was
The
able
Hand
to
of God, which is on Amazon now.
I mean, he was able to exploit it a lot more than Linda Hamilton was, and that's probably because he was a dude, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of obviously misogyny and sexism in the industry that's going to. They will make a star out of Dan Hedaya,
right?
But we all know for a fact
star
that
is kind of stretching it.
A star. Well, yes, but you look at BB Newworth, who was playing next to Dan Hedaya for just as many seasons on Cheers. And she was, in my opinion, much more talented.
Oh, absolutely. But, I mean, if you look at Sons of Anarchy, which I don't particularly enjoy, but what's her name?
Not a Sons of Anarchy fan.
Yeah.
My wife is, because apparently the men get naked.
Well, I believe everybody gets naked, and then everybody dies. But the mother from Married with Children, whose name is totally escaping me.
Kate Siegel?
Segal,
yeah.
Yeah, she was, of course,
she's beautiful too.
Yeah, but now that I think about it, she's also married to the screenwriter of that show or creator. So that could be why she was cast.
Yeah.
No, that's not fair. I think she was really good in that, and she is much older. Why diverting? We're going to cut all that. Sorry.
No, that's all right. But we're no longer rooting for the bad guy, right? In the first half of the film we were, and now we're not.
I don't know if we were ever rooting for him, but we were definitely much more interested in his path. And right now, it kind of changes that. Okay, I'm less focused on his objectives than these two.
Yes. And he's got a scar on his chin, kind of like reminds me of Indiana Jones.
Right, it's very Harrison Fordish.
Okay, I wasn't the only one.
No, you weren't the only one. I thought of that too. I'm sure that was done on purpose.
And I'm guessing that she starts this.
Yeah.
And obviously she wants it. And that's not something that's familiar in film. No, well, you know what I mean.
No, I don't disagree at all. Yeah. But it is one of those things, just the way you put it was very funny. Well, she wants it.
Well, I mean, she wants to have this encounter.
Right.
And film just isn't geared around what a woman wants, or if they do, they want to turn her into a tramp or a vamp or something femme fatale like, but that she doesn't fit any of those molds.
Well, yeah, I think that's right. I remember a lot of movies where the female is the sexual aggressor, for lack of a better term, but I don't. That's something I have to think about. I don't really know.
I watched this, by the way, this one scene, I don't know, 40, 50 times. Every time I watched the movie, I'd rewind it and play it back. I mean, I had this fucking thing on loop.
Right.
Am I the only one?
No, you're not the only one.
Okay.
No, but I remember it. It's one of those things. Okay, there's like 5 things I remember from this movie when I was a kid. One of them was the
Linda Hamilton naked.
Yeah, exactly.
And I don't mean to sound like a complete dick when I say that, but obviously they did that for a reason.
No, you're a dude, right? So it's one of those things where I suspect that there are many ladies of your approximate same age who would rewind to, Arnold Schwarzenegger running.
Oh my God, yes.
Where his schlong is flopping all over the place. I mean, it's one of the, okay.
So there's that scene in Batman v Superman where Clark Kent's like shirtless.
Yeah, that was
Henry Cavill,
right?
Or even in Man of Steel when he's running up from the beach side in the beginning when he's hobo Superman. And my wife
I remember hearing women screaming. I'm like,
gasps.
Really? It's like, look at this. It's right here next to you. And it didn't seem to make that much of an impact.
And we even talk about every time we watch Thor, I lean over to my daughter and my son and I said, "This is your mom's favorite shot right here." Chris Hemsworth flexing. That looks like a Ducati.
It might be.
Oh yeah. So other than like the adult movies in the background,
he kickstarts it, which is interesting.
Now you see also Spartan Burgers.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. No comment.
No, I actually have no comment.
Like he's a warrior, right? So I just found it weird that there's like Spartan Burger across the street and like he's a beefcake and he's like killing shit like he's a warrior. So I'm not saying that's intentional.
No,
I'm
but
just
okay. I understand what you're saying.
Reading that and applying it and
running with it from there.
Yeah.
Yeah, might be.
No back projection here.
No. All right, so
the chase scene.
This is,
this is the same fucking tunnel that they use in millions of. Isn't this like where is this? It's north of L.A. It's in the hills, and Blade Runner used this tunnel, and they used it in Sneakers.
And it's very futuristic yet, modern. It's a perfect tunnel.
Yeah, and we can complain about, well, you just used a tunnel to make things look futuristic, but the Russians did it too, like Tarkovsky and.
Eisenstein?
No, Tarkovsky. He did that 70s Solaris.
Ooh, I've yet to see Solaris.
The freeways.
Right.
Boom. That was Road Warrior right there.
It was very Road Warrior. And one of the things I do remember about this was the sound design, because there is a certain echo with the pipe bombs.
Oh, you sped up the camera a little bit there.
Yeah.
No, the sound design in the Terminator is awesome. The sound effects in the Terminator are great. The sound editing is stellar. There's a couple of scenes that are overdubbed, and they're done very well, where you don't actually
lose a whole lot.
Right, like pretty much every time they're in a car, because when you're recording in a car, you're gonna have an echo. Every time they're in a car, they're dubbing it. It just doesn't. It doesn't sound like a dub. This is amazing. His body just flying across.
Just slides.
Yeah.
No, it's once again a really well designed and executed action scene. It's not over the top, but it certainly feels real.
Yeah. And people complain to me sometimes, like, well, he looks like a mannequin when he's sliding across the concrete like that. Like, well, he's a robot. I mean,
it makes sense.
It plays well.
Yeah, it doesn't. It's not. Oh, and he gets hammered by the Mack truck here. It is tremendous.
So I was watching Iron Man 3 the other day, and that happens in Iron Man 3, and I could not help but draw like almost exactly the same way.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. And there were a couple of things like also in Iron Man 3, one of the extremist dudes, Guy Pearce, he's walking out of the fire, and I swear to God, it looks exactly like the scene of Arnie walking out of the tanker fire.
It wouldn't stun me. I mean, Shane Black is, in my opinion, actually a pretty good filmmaker.
Well, and he was writing shit back then too.
He was.
Like he wrote all the Lethal Weapons.
Right, and Last Boy Scout.
Yeah, and I don't remember if he wrote Predator, but he was in Predator.
I think he was just in it. He probably, I'm sure.
And he's produced a bunch of shit. Yeah. And he was like Carrie Fisher as far as like screenwrite doctoring.
A lot of credits, yeah, or maybe no credit.
Yeah. Well, like Mace Newfield's got that great story about having John Milius in the desk down the hall, and it was like every day problems would come up, and every day he would call John Milius and it's like, I've got this problem on page 32 of this, fix it.
Figure it out.
Right, and that's what John Milius did. Touched hundreds of scripts, no credits.
No credits, yeah.
Right,
but
including the famous 2 speeches in the Hunt for Red October.
Didn't know that.
Yeah. Again, something I learned 30 years ago that has no relevance to the Terminator.
But for the purposes of the conversation now, it's free-flowing and perfect.
Looks like she had bowling shoes on.
Well, 80s styles were unusual.
They were.
There are no parachute pants.
No.
Now, this is really well done. Once again, it's attention to detail. Got the red eye, right?
Yeah.
Didn't need it in there, but it's...
Oh, and you can see it outside the cockpit, too,
right.
like far away.
It's just kind of one of those attentions to detail that really helps.
And he is hurt, too. Like, he looks hurt.
Right. And here we come up to another rear projection that I remember very vividly, even as a child.
Yeah. Well, this is actually a model. I mean, this is like a 1/10 to scale model that they blew up. And it looks, I mean... It looks like gold, man.
It looks right.
And I saw this, if you get the DVD, there's a special feature where they take you through step by step for about 15 minutes, this entire breakdown. And oh my God, man.
But right there.
Yeah.
Very backwardated. But it still works.
Oh my God, yeah. I mean, I didn't know when I was a kid. I still, to this day, I see that and I think it's real. How is Reese still alive? You know, he's just as much of a survivor as the Terminator is.
Yeah, he is, and it's one of those, do not underestimate the productive powers of a trash can. Right up there with a refrigerator.
A resourceful human being. There's a lot of that in
now,
this.
I would like to know, and you probably do, how they pull that off with a stuntman, because that certainly looks like a stuntman. And that's not a criticism.
Yeah, that shot right there.
Right,
with his face.
Well, when he was walking out of and falling down, it's...
Oh, yeah.
Like,
no, that was a stunt man.
Maybe a second and a half, 2 seconds, but the flames are pretty intense looking. Movie magic. Okay, so you see the face disintegrating. And nobody watching this movie believes it's over.
No.
But there is a reasonably well played, the way it's projected and presented is, okay, it seems like it very well could be over.
We'll fix that in post. Yeah, no, the way that the medium shot behind the back or over the shoulder.
Right.
It looks like the credits are about to roll.
It seems like it could be. Nobody believes it, but you still kind of believe it.
But you're not caught into the the end of the Return of the King, where there's like 3 endings. Jesus Christ, when is this? You're not that far.
No.
Back projection again here.
Yep.
Because this is like Harryhausen type of quality stop motion animation.
Yeah. This is what, Stan Winston? Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
But it is, very much.
Oh my God, man!
Jason and the Argonauts. For
yes.
Sure.
Well, my favorite Harryhausen is the Clash of the Titans.
That's your favorite?
Yeah,
okay.
the owl, and I was not an Argonauts fan.
Oh, of course, I'll be honest. When I watched that, I probably was 10.
Yeah.
Not that's not how old I am, but when I saw it on TV,
that's how older you are on the inside.
Yeah.
Right? We're still all kids on the inside. That's why we like the Terminator still.
True.
So there's an entire subplot that was cut out that was really quite unbelievable. Sarah tracked down Cyberdyne while they were still in a motel and tried to get Reese to help her blow it up before they could develop the technology that became Skynet.
Okay.
Reese was against the idea because his mission was to protect her and not expose Sarah to further danger. Sarah thought it would be the best way to defend herself. They ended up exactly where this movie ends up, so they decided to just shorten the film by cutting that out. And I think that was a wise choice because
yeah, you don't need any extra time in this movie.
No, I think it's just fine. And that's also that's like the second half of Terminator 2.
Right, well, that is obviously incorporated into it, for sure. And here's the machines protecting the humans from the machines.
So, yeah, and, this, to bring it to another moment in time, this came out the same weekend as Dune.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? Okay.
And so, for $4.5 million, Cameron made
a much more
40
entertaining
million.
movie. Yeah.
40 million while it was still in theaters.
Right.
And I don't even know what it's made since then, but in rentals alone, back when we all went to Blockbuster.
Oh, yeah, it's got to be 4 times that easy.
Oh, my God, yeah. Dune opened the same weekend, lost $50 million. The entire budget for the Terminator was less than a special effects budget for Ghostbusters.
Yeah. It makes sense, but no words.
No, so there's no hero in the Terminator, is there?
Well,
is Sarah the hero?
I don't know if she's the hero so much as the protagonist, right? I mean, there is no technical quote hero where it's like, okay, I expect this person to succeed.
It's not that kind of movie.
It's not that kind of movie, which is probably why it holds up so well. You know, they're all heroes in their own regard, but sorry, I'm just focused on this part. I think it's visually
it's captivating.
It's visually arresting. The eyes,
and the camera angles that not the camera angles, but he's the positioning the camera. It's like 90 degree, and then halfway through the factory, he starts going to 45, and then back to 90, and you have a tendency to get confused real quick on the chain of events and the direction of your eye,
right?
And the way things flow in space in your mind. Right, that's why like Kubrick's fucking with you in The Shining, for example, is to deliberately destroy that idea of what the hotel is in your mind.
Right.
And Cameron manages to pull that off. You never get that feeling in The Factory you can very easily get lost and you're like, what? Where are they going? What's going on?
Yeah, that's one of those things that Cameron does very well. You always know what's going on, where people are. The geography is really easy to correlate in your brain, and he hits him with a pipe.
He's got the blood on the right side of his face, almost like where those tire tracks were on Bill Paxton's face. I just noticed that.
Yeah, I hadn't noticed that.
I mean, again, means nothing.
No, but it's interesting.
And that one scene of him just cranking the pipe around in the BFI, I read that scene was so complicated. Mm-hmm. They planned forever to execute that shot, and then push came to shove, and James Cameron could not shoot that himself, so he had to delegate that to second unit.
Right.
So that shows you just how good second unit was on this movie, right? It blends it. In some movies, it shows up badly.
Yeah, some it's very obvious.
But then you got movies like, The Temple of Doom. Mm-hmm. George Lucas shot second unit on Temple of Doom, and that looks flawless. Right. I sometimes think Temple of Doom is George Lucas's best movie.
In some regards, you might be right.
And I'm a big fan of THX 1138.
I admire it. It's just one of those I don't have a whole lot of interest in revisiting, right? It's a well-crafted film. Especially for what it is, for the budget and for the objective.
So there's also a great scene that was cut out that showed factory workers picking up the chip from a skull and examining it. And then it cut to Sarah being put into an ambulance, and the camera pulls out to show that they were at a Cyberdyne factory the entire time.
I'm glad they didn't put it in there.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes a lot of sense. It actually is what ends up happening based on Terminator 2, but I didn't need to see it when I was watching this.
It's a brilliant ending, but it may have been too dark for the film.
Yeah.
But it does beg the question, is this a Cyberdyne factory? But we can say that when we watch it after we watch T2.
Right.
Like, oh, this is probably the Cyberdyne. It's more fun that way than to have it spelled out for us.
Yeah, and also it's one of those where, the paradox with the Polaroid really transmits that very effectively, where you kind of build this circle, which is impossible, but plausible.
Is this a George Romero moment?
Undoubtedly, they're all George Romero moments when you get down to it. We're all going to be zombies. No, it's just that creeping death, right?
God, there was something else I completely forgot to bring up.
I don't know, but this is, again, one of those that, based on what you're saying, and which is right, the budget... it certainly didn't match the ambition from a number standpoint, but they certainly met the challenge. And it looks as real as anything from the day and age, and to a large degree holds up today.
when she presses the button and she says, "You're terminated, fucker." Like, I remember being a kid, and this is back when I know that we grew up in the '80s, and we were on the cusp of the F word, like being part of our lexicon.
Right.
But it was before Clerks, and it was before Pulp Fiction, which really put the F word, like, this is when you really started dropping it.
In Scarface, yeah, it's before it was part of punctuation.
Right. Well, even in Scarface, I don't remember the F word just being just every other word.
Oh, really?
Like Goodfellas. I think Goodfellas, it's...
I mean, that's what I remember with Scarface. It was actually one of the most notorious in that regard.
So when it comes to
But it was still, yeah.
When it comes to a woman saying it, though.
Right. It was a shocking moment.
Right. Like a woman said the F word. Like I couldn't get around that. And the fact that she says fucker instead of fuck.
Right.
It's directed. Whereas most of the time it's descriptive.
True. And hydraulic presses. They work wonders.
Yeah. There's something going on with the cage. I've thought about it.
I have absolutely no idea why that exists.
But again,
you can still get your arm in there under the press if, so it's not for protection. So I'm not sure why it's there. But there's the arm. That makes a tremendous reappearance in T2.
Yes. And that was a moment in T2 where people were just, that's the arm. They got it out of the factory, man. It's full circle. It's like the photograph. I mean, she just looks, talk about great acting. She looks beat to hell. Yeah. She looks like she just survived some great traumatic event. Not like she just arrived there 15 minutes before they started shooting.
Very true.
Which you kind of have to keep that in mind.
Which they do that, and then again, is the attention to detail, right? Mm-hmm.
And that shot looked like everything I'd ever seen in like St. Elsewhere or General Hospital. So this is Joshua Tree National Park, which is a stand-in for Mexico.
If you're just some regular old gringo from Michigan, it certainly seems authentic enough.
So she's got a dog. I assume it's to sniff other Terminators.
Yes.
Yeah, and she's got this 357, 4 1/4 inch Smith.
Hanging out right by the abdomen. It seems to make no sense, but that's okay.
Yeah, by her pregnant belly.
Yeah, it's of all the places.
Pemex.
Boo.
We'll just skip that commentary.
Could be PDVSA.
Could be PDVSA. Oh, the one thing that I wanted to bring up that I didn't get a chance to is there's that amazing scene that was cut out of T2 and they put it back in for the special edition, and it's that one where Arnie's sitting in a chair and they're taking the chip out of his head, but it's actually Arnie's stunt double. He's actually sitting across from the stunt double, and then Linda Hamilton's taking the chip out of his head, and there's Linda Hamilton across, and it looks like they're in front of a mirror, but there's no fucking mirror.
Okay.
It's actually Linda Hamilton has a twin sister. And so James Cameron got her to play Sarah Connor. And so they're both in the scene with a stunt double and sitting across from Arnie. Huh. The two Linda, I can't remember what his sister's name is. And they have to mimic each other's actions, pulling the chip out and putting it onto the table. It's the most amazing thing that I've ever seen. I swear to God they did it in front of a mirror. And apparently they got down to the set and Cameron couldn't shoot it in a mirror. Like he couldn't place the camera where it couldn't be seen. Things get funny when you put mirrors in front of cameras. And so he asked Linda Hamilton's twin sister to show up and for them to copy each other's movements in order to get that shot.
Really? No, no idea.
Yeah, you should go back if you ever get a chance.
Yeah, no,
I didn't want to spend too much time.
I vaguely remember that scene, but I'll have to go back and watch it. And I don't doubt that's
true. I swear to God, it was a mirror. I swear to God.
I'm sure. Yeah.
No mirror in that shot.
And no visual effects.
No, it's all practical.
Interesting.
So the photograph means what?
I don't know if the photograph necessarily means
it's just
anything.
A loop.
Yeah, it's just a loop. It is one of those satisfying moments that really kind of demonstrates why Reese would do all of this. right?
It becomes the impetus for his volunteering.
Right. Otherwise, I mean, yeah, of course he's going to want to do it to save the known universe and etc. But why would he have that picture? And it just fixes. I don't know if it fixes anything, but it's very satisfying.
Is Skynet the sister of Hal?
Cousin?
That's good enough.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really thought about it.
I've always loved this movie. I just never knew why, and I thought that we would explore that.
Mm-hmm. No, I've always enjoyed it as well. Yeah, I don't know. It's one of those that there's a reason why a lot of these movies get turned into shared universes, right? I remember there was a Terminator versus Batman comic. There was a Terminator versus RoboCop versus Aliens and all of that. And yeah, to a certain degree, it's just capitalizing on pop culture and, dorks' ability to spend money on almost anything you present them. But at the same time, there is a logical, interface between these different universes that kind of makes it seem the same. So could it be related to Hal, or like I said earlier, when you have these various alternate futures, where you've got Hal, which would be in the past, I guess, to a certain degree. No, scratch that. I don't know. RoboCop and Terminator is what I was referencing, but then you got the Matrix, and is that just another offshoot of that? And you could imagine a scenario that people would want to imagine that to follow through.
Okay. What's your favorite movie? Do you have one?
Oh, I probably don't have one, right? I mean,
there's too many. There's too
many, right? It's just what day of the week is it, and I'll give you something, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I feel like it at that moment. I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, if you'd ask me what's your favorite gangster movie, I'd probably be able to tell you more than my favorite movie overall. But I'm kind of like, the older I get,
so you can get into genres, but
yeah, it's hard to say overall number one of all time.
You got to tighten it down.
Right. I mean, to work for me, what's yours?
Empire.
That's your favorite movie.
Oh, yeah. I mean, any day of the week, any time of day.
That's your ultimate rewatch.
Empire Strikes Back. That's my ultimate rewatch.
Which makes sense. I mean, there's things like that which I would never get tired of. Right.
Right.
I mean, Goodfellas is a good one. I referenced it
That's
earlier.
a good one.
Okay, it's on. I'll watch it right now. I don't know if it's my favorite movie, but maybe it is. If that's the parameters, if you're willing to watch it anytime it's on, maybe that is your favorite movie. I don't know. I try not to think about it too much because you just go down this endless loop where you don't really get productive.
Yeah. We also try not to be. Well, I try not to be too judgmental. I don't want to be like Eddie Vedder, who Pearl Jam got to that point where, like, how can you judge our music? Because our music is art and we're artists and we're creating. And how dare you, like, say our music is bad or our music is good? It's just music. And I'm just kind of, shut the fuck up.
Play a good rock song and call it good.
Everybody knows that Citizen Kane is better than A Lady from Shanghai. That's just a fact.
All right, yeah, that's it. It's accepted fact.
You can like one more than the other.
Right.
But we know that there's a value, there's an intrinsic value to that.
Right.
Or else everybody would be watching Liquid Sky. And you and I are the only ones laughing about that.
No, there's probably
and out of everyone, and this is a film commentary podcast, like there are hundreds or thousands of film podcasts.
Right.
There are very few film commentary podcasts. I'm just one of a few dozen. Mm-hmm. My listenership out of that pie is extremely small. And still, there will be a tiny minority of the people who listen to this podcast who know what the fuck Liquid Sky is.
Right.
No, I'm not saying, because a movie is small and you don't see it, that it has no value. Mm-hmm. It's not what I'm saying.
Right.
What I'm saying is...
It's pretty obscure.
It's obscure for a reason.
Oh, yeah. It is not a good movie. Doesn't mean it's not entertaining and you can't enjoy it. It's not a good movie.
Right.
Right. So,
Plan 9 from Outer Space.
Not a good movie.
Yeah.
No, that's actually, frankly, a terrible movie. That's unwatchable.
Terminator is a great movie.
Terminator's a phenomenal flick. Absolutely.
And here Voodoo's asking us, how did you like the movie? I mean, is this not 5 stars?
For me, it'd be 4.5.
4.5?
Yeah. Maybe 4.
That's 4?
Yeah, I think 4.
What's T2?
T2 for me would be 4.5.
Or
right?
you like T2 better?
I do. I mean, it's been quite a few years since I watched T2. I do like it better, I think. It's more of a fleshed out universe. I mean, the extra money for the effects and the time, I think, does actually assist the story, right?
Yes.
Sometimes you don't need it. It's just bloat. But I think for that particular movie, it actually helps tremendously. I think that, overall, I find it a more satisfying movie, I think, especially and this is going to be one of those things where very few people agree, I think the extended version is my preferred version.
No, I don't think I've seen the extended version.
Oh yeah, and it's one of those that don't.
Well, that was the one with the scene that was cut into it. Like, so I have seen it.
Yeah, so they had the scene cut into it.
Yeah, the double twin scene.
And they had the happy ending to a certain degree.
Right.
If I remember right, but it's been so freaking long, right? So I need to watch it again. But my memory of it is more 4.5.
If I cover it on the podcast, you want to come back?
If people will have me, if you'll have me. Well, should we wrap it up for right now?
Yeah, we can. I don't want it to end.
No, you can always put it on pause and we can rewind 5 seconds, because now that we're not locked up against the movie, you can rewind it pretty easily.
What we should do is we should just chat and wander on and go tangential, and I should put it out as a special. It's a special episode.
Just random ramblings.
Yes. Let me wrap it up. And unless you have any final thoughts about Terminator, Dave?
No thoughts.
Okay. Great having you.
No, it was a pleasure to be here. I really appreciate it.
Thanks very much for coming.
We're doing a handshake now that nobody can see.
Thanks for hanging out with Dave Anderson and I while we watched The Terminator. I hope you found this interesting, whether you watched the commentary on in your home or just listened in your car. The Super 70 podcast is brought to you by Dylan Davis. That's me. You can find me, my podcast, my books, and my blog at www.thatdylandavis.com. The Super 70 podcast is available on SoundCloud, iTunes, and Google Play. All music on this podcast was written and recorded by Rosalind McPhail. You can reach her on SoundCloud.com. If you're offended by the interpretation of this film, please let me know by sending me an email at thatdylandavis@gmail.com. If you like the podcast, please express this on iTunes, Google Play, or SoundCloud by leaving a rating and a review. You can also find me on Twitter at thatdylandavis and find my books on Amazon.com. This is Dylan Davis, and we'll meet next time at Jack Rabbit Slims.